So in this video I'm going to just show you how to use the new line editor in Smart Edit to edit vertical and horizontal positions on lines, and the differences between the line edit mode and the Linestring Editor in TBC. So to start off with, I'm just going to draw some simple lines using our drawing tool, which is called Smart Draw, or Takeoff Lines as it used to be called. And in here we can basically create a line, and I'm going to make it a 3D line here, and I'm just going to say, give it a name, and then we're going to say draw it on layer 0, and we're going to start drawing. And in here I'm just going to make a bit of room, and I'm going to zoom in here so I'm actually working in like a reasonable kind of coordinate space. Okay, so now we're going to start off, and I'm going to just draw a point and give it an elevation, and I'm going to draw another point and give it another elevation, and just keep going. And I'm going to draw a couple of 2D points here, and then I'm going to do another 3D point over here, and then come back and do another one over here, and then we'll do one more and just make that 2D. So at that point there, when you're drawing the line in TBC, you have the option to use the extend vertical function, which basically will put the extend vertical set to yes in the properties for this line. And that means that if you leave a 2D node at the end, it will take the slope from these 2 points and project it to the end point. So this will be an interpolated point. These 2 points have no elevation, but they'll be calculated based on the distance along the line and the elevation at this point and here, assuming it's a straight slope between here and here along the path of that line. And in Smart Edit mode, in Smart Edit mode, now we're going to go into the line edit mode here. And in the line edit mode, you can pick the line that you want to edit, and in this it highlights the 3D element of the line, and if the extend vertical flag was set to yes on that line, and we'll just check that. If I set this to yes here, now the line is extended all the way to the end of the line here. So when we actually look at this, we've got two tabs just like the Linestring Editor, and at the top here we've got the mode that we're in is Linestring Editor, and we can say we're going to edit this line, which is the one I created here, and the line name it shows us here, and we can edit the line name should we want to do that. So if I want to call that now embankment, I can change it directly in the editor. Once you've done that, you've got the ability to say whether you want to apply the extend vertical flag or not on the line, and also whether you want to enable line markings or not on the line. If you turn that off when you pick the line, it would not show you the line markings. If you turn it on, the line markings are visible. So this is like a line marking override, because some edits, especially horizontal edits, you don't really need to know what the verticals are. It's really only when you're adding elevations or editing elevations that you need to see the line markings while you're working. So depending on which mode of edit you're in, you may or may not want to enable the line markings. And then you've got a horizontal tab and a vertical tab, and I want to just talk a little bit about the different modes here. So in the horizontal and vertical tab, you basically have two major functions to work with. You have either edit location, which is to change a node position, or you have the add nodes, which would allow you to add extra points into the line if you're doing horizontal editing. And in the vertical tab, you would have the add and the edit mode. The add is adding VPIs, and the edit mode is to change the VPIs. And I'm going to start off in the vertical because this is where most of us work every day in terms of editing verticals on lines or adding verticals on lines. And in here we're going to be in whichever mode it tells you on the cursor. So the first thing is on the cursor. Keep an eye on that because the cursor is going to tell you which mode it's in. So right now it's in edit VPI mode, and it will stick in that mode until you tell it to change. So if I want to go to add VPI mode, now you're in add VPI mode, and it immediately snaps to the rubber band and puts you into the distance along function. And when you click on a location, you can add the elevation at that point. So I'm going to go 101.3, and as soon as you've done that one, it's ready for the next one, and we'll do 102.1, and you can go anywhere along the line here, 103.6, and then 104.3, and maybe you want to put a point at the end of the line here at say 105. And so now we've made this line fully 3D. So that's the add VPI mode. It's very straightforward. If we go to the edit mode, if you're in this mode, by the way, and you want to, let's say you click to add a VPI, but you go, hang on a second, now it's asking me for the elevation. I didn't really mean to put one there. then the escape key is your toggle between entering the elevation and selecting the location. So as soon as you hit the escape key, you're back in to select the location, and now you can add the elevation. If you're in edit mode here, now you're going to be in the opposite mode, which is now you are being asked to select a node or a VPI location. So if I click this one, as soon as you click it, it's in the elevation mode over here. You see I didn't have to touch anything over here, and it's already ready to change. So I can do 101.3 and press enter, and then I can edit another VPI. So let's say I click this one and do that one as 102.4, and so it's very easy to click on a node and change its elevation. Now you'll see that I'm actually editing both horizontal 3D nodes and VPIs at the same time, and that's because in this editor we've given you the ability to edit any 3D element of a line directly within the editor. And you can see in the table here it tells us all the information about the line. So if I look down the line here, the key things to look at are these are the distance along values. That's the distance along the line. The elevation values, if they're actual elevations, then they'll be shown with an elevation value without the orange box. If the node is 2D and the elevation is interpreted, we highlight that box in an orange highlight, just so you know that at that point there is an elevation, but it's interpolated from the line elements either side of it. It tells you whether there's a vertical curve or not in here, or a vertical arc, and that depends on what you've created when you created the VPIs. It asks you what type of location it is, so here it's telling us these are all elevation points, but this would allow you to put inbound slope, outbound slope, slope, or offset slope as the way you calculate the VPI locations, or a vertical curve, etc. And if you've got a vertical curve, then you put in the length or the radius of the vertical curve, and that would then just define it here. And we'll come back and look at that in just a minute. This column tells us whether they're 3D nodes, VPIs, or 2D nodes, so you can see directly as you move up and down the line. So if I use the arrow keys on my keyboard, you can see that the grey highlight bar moves up and down the table, and at any point it's showing you what kind of node that point right is. So we're looking at this point right here, so this point is a VPI. It also tells me the inbound slope and the outbound slope at that point. So the slope from here to here is 3.2%, and the slope from here to here is 2.1%. So you can see the slope information directly about any node that you happen to click on the table. Now the table is to a large extent interactive with the graphics, but we don't refresh this cursor position. We found that there is a little lag in that. So what we do in here is if you actually move along the line to the point where you're now off the screen here, you can just say scroll to current node, and it will roll up the table directly to that node when you're at that location. And if you scroll back to the other end, you'll see it goes off the top of the screen, and again scroll to current node, and that brings it up on the screen so you can actually see it here. The other thing that we do in here in just elevation mode is we give you these two buttons down here. These two buttons basically allow you to set, for example, 2D nodes, which would include this node and any other point along the line, this point for example, that are 2D, where they have an interpolated elevation. By doing 2D to 3D, you'll see it adds elevations at those points, and those orange boxes have now gone, so all those points are now tagged as 3D locations. And the other button here is, if you look at this, the triangles here represent VPIs, or points that are defined by distance along an elevation. And if you want to lock those in so they become 3D nodes, you can use this VPI to 3D, and it will convert those points into 3D nodes so that they're now locked in and they can't move. So if you now grab using grips, for example, in here, if I right click, I'll click back in here for a second. If I pop up this, I can turn on rock grips on the line, and if I grab this grip now, because those nodes are all 3D nodes, they won't shuffle down the line when I adjust either end of the line, etc. It will just leave them exactly as they were. And I just did Shift M to pop up that menu, and you have to be in the line select mode when you do that. And if you wanted to see the vertical profile of that, again you can do Shift M directly on here, and you can pick the profile viewer, and it will highlight that line and show you the vertical profile of that line while you're working. So keep going through here. So this is the line edit mode for vertical. So you've got the add nodes and the edit nodes. In the edit vertical nodes, the other things that you can do in here, for example, is if I click on this one, I can say I want to be in add VPI mode, and I want to set my elevation by incoming slope. And if you want to do that, you just pick along the line somewhere and you type in your incoming slope. So if I say -5% and then hit enter, it will calculate that point at 5% slope from here and set the elevation from there. And if we look at that node in the list of nodes here, that node is the one that's highlighted, and it's got a 5% downhill slope coming into the node and an 11.4% slope going out of the node. And so in here all the time it's calculating the values as you go. If you want to do an outgoing slope, let's pick another one here. Let's do an outgoing slope right here somewhere. So I'm going to go outgoing slope, and if I click on a point right here, I can say that outgoing slope would be, let's say, 3.2% positive, and press enter, and then that will calculate the elevation at that point, and again set the elevation on here as a calculated value of 102.51. So if I scroll down here, see if I can find that in the list somewhere, 102.51, it will be this one. It's set by outgoing slope, and you can see the elevation values computed on the line here. The slope is doing the same thing, but in that case you put in two slopes, an inbound slope and an outbound slope, and it will calculate where that point should lie and set the elevation. Now the other thing you can do is this offset slope, and before I do that, I'm just going to switch command and go back here to the Smart Draw command, and I'm going to draw a 2D line here just to show this. And the 2D line, I'm just going to draw a line kind of running along here, but maybe variable height. And just imagine we've got the top of embankment slope that we've just elevated, and now we've been given this 2D line in the plans, and we know that that line is at a 3-to-1 slope from the reference line, from this line. So in this case now what we can do is we can say let's edit this 2D line, and in this case we want to add VPIs, and in this case we're going to use the offset slope method, and this gives us two methods of working. One is that we can pick the reference line here, and then we can type in the cross slope, let's say -3-to-1, and this would work for doing like a 2% cross slope on a sidewalk. It would work on embankments, it would work on ponds where they give you contours and they give you a bottom of pond line but no elevations on the pond line, or an embankment where they give you a slope and they give you the toe of the slope in 2D but they don't tell you what the elevation should be on that line. And so this is good for calculating that. Now in this case you can either decide to do these locations manually, so I can just click on locations along the line here, and wherever I happen to click it's going to calculate an elevation value for me. So anywhere you want to click here you can set elevations along the line, and doing it manually means you can control what happens around these external corners. So for example, if I click here it will calculate perpendicular to the line nearest to that location, and then I can keep going along the line here until I get where I want. And this stops it from giving you the overlap zone, because of course if you project a line from here perpendicular to the reference line and you do one from here, you're going to get a crossover zone in here to calculate that. And so by doing this we can set the elevations wherever we think we need to, just at random intervals along the line. I'm just going to do a few more here just to kind of set this, and at the end here we can just pick the end point and it will calculate that. Now at any point you can come back and add in extra nodes. If you feel like you've missed somewhere, you can always come back and add a few extra points in wherever you see that you think you might need those. And that's now calculated that line in 3D. And of course if you're tracking this and you see there's a swale in here somewhere because of the shape of the line, then you can pick up more points through that swale area to get what you think you need. Once you've managed to create that, if you then say let's make a surface out of this, so let's take a surface model out of this and let's call it slope, and in here I'm just going to pick the two lines and then just say OK. That builds me the 3D surface model, and if I now go to the 3D view and take a look at what we just created, now we've got our 3-to-1 embankment slope calculated out very quickly at that slope from the reference line at that 3-to-1 side slope, and you can see here it's keeping the slope very uniform all the way along here. Now if you for any reason decided that you didn't want to do it manually, then let's do it the other way. So we're going to come back and I'm just going to use the change elevation command to change the elevation of this line, and I'm going to make it back to 2D and say apply. So that line is now gone, the surface model has been removed as a result. So let's go back into the this command here, and we're going to go back into adding VPIs to this line still using the cross slope, still using the same reference, still using the same side slope, but here we can pick intervals, and then we can say we want to calculate this at intervals of every, let's say, 10 feet, and we can then say we want to start it at a specific location along the line and end it at a particular point along the line, and we can do a range. So instead of doing the whole length of the line here, we could specify that we want to calculate it from here to here, and then hit the apply button, and at that point it will calculate you the 3D line along here, and then you can come back in again and turn this off, and then in here the distance along we can just now add some manual nodes in to kind of complete the side slope. So you can define the whole length of the line automatically, you can do just fractions of the line, and then you can fill in some gaps with some additional points should you decide that that's necessary. So it's a very powerful tool for calculating cross slopes from a reference line with slope values along the line. So this is the vertical editor. If we now go back, let's go back into Takeoff Lines again here, or Smart Draw, and in this case we're going to draw a 2D line to start off with. So I'm going to go 2D, start a new line here, and let's say we want to draw a line, just say like this. And at that point now I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to switch back to Smart Edit. Okay, so I'm editing this line now. Make sure I got the right one. Okay, so now if I move along the line here using the arrow keys, let's say I want to move this node here, then once you're in the edit mode here, once you've actually picked the node that you want to edit, so I'm going to pick this node, you pick the location and press enter and it will change it. Scroll back to the previous node, click the node, and then pick a location for it and press enter. Move forward, click the node that you want to edit, make sure you click the right location, so click the segment, and then when it asks you for the location, so I pick the location again there, and then pick the location of the node and press enter. So this allows you to move the nodes on the line. If you want to add nodes into a line, then you would go into the add mode, and when you're in the add mode you've got a number of different options. So you've got coordinate, point ID, and station and offset. So we'll start off with coordinate, and if I then come back, let's say I want to insert points before this segment, so to be inserted in here, then I could now say, so you select the segment you want to insert the node before. So I'm going to go insert before, and in this case now I can pick this node here. So I pick this node, and now I can pick a location, and then pick a location, and pick a location as I do it, and each time it's stopping and asking me if I want to put in elevations. So if I click on this one here and say, okay, now I want to pick a new location, so pick this node, and now it's asking me to insert node before it, so I can then again click somewhere within that segment range and add those nodes in to here. Now if you want to do it after a node, then you would move to the end of the line segment like this, and you would say add after the segment that's highlighted. So at that point now it's expecting me, if I click on this segment right here as my start point, now it's asking me, let's do it again. So if I pick the add node after location, so you click the location for the new node, so if I click here and enter, and then I click here and enter, and click here and enter, and click here and enter, now it's allowing me to add nodes after the previous segment. So this is a kind of a quick and easy way to edit line segments and line nodes in either 2D or 3D. If you wanted to add points using station and offset in relationship to another line, again, if I go back to switch command and go to Smart Draw one more time here, and let's say I want to draw another 2D line, and I want to draw that, just start a new line, and I want to draw it, let's say from here to, let's say, here, and then say now I want to switch back to Smart Edit. And when I switch back to Smart Edit, now instead of coordinate mode, so if I go back on the line here, and if I want to now edit points into this section here where this is highlighted, I could now use, instead of coordinate mode, I could use station and offset. And in this case, when you're doing it, you can say, when you calculate this, you can use the elevation formula, which would allow you to type in a partial elevation, and it would add a formula value to that, or you can apply a slope from the reference line. So that left reference line was 3D. You could say you want to be at station, offset, and a cross slope, and it would calculate you a new point in this node at a cross slope from the reference line if you want to do that. this case I'm only interested in 2D position, so I'm going to click on this line right here. Then it says what distance along do you want, so I'm going to click a station here, and once I've clicked that it says what offset do you want, and I want to go maybe let's say 8.25 feet, and I want to have an elevation value of 101.2, and it will then add a value at that point, which is 8.5 feet off this line at that station that I clicked, and it's got the elevation of 101.2. So next point I can type in again. It's got to be within a highlighted segment, so if you want to change the segment you can just move the arrow and then you click on a station and you click in the offset, and then you can tab and you can put in the elevation, so again 102.1, and now you've got the elevation in there. So you can use station and offset, and if you have points along the line here and you want to insert nodes using points, then you would use the CAD and create point function, and in here we would create a few points here. So I'm going to create a point here and a point here and a point here, and let's say a point here and one here. And if we wanted to add those as points into the line again, we would go switch back to the Smart Edit command, and we'd be in the if we now move the cursor back, so we've highlighted this segment, and now we want to insert nodes before the highlighted segment node. The segment node is this end point right here with a yellow circle on it, and so I want to insert before that. In this case, instead of using station offset, I want to use point ID. And in this case now, if I want to insert a point here, I would click on this point ID, and then it's asking me for the next point ID. And then I can use the back arrow key to highlight this segment and click on that point and this point and this point. And you can add those into the segment if you know the northing and easting of those locations. You could create the points and then insert those points into the segment using that mode. So this editor gives you the ability to do a lot of things for editing horizontally and editing vertically, an ability to change 2D nodes to 3D and VPIs to 3D as you go, and it's a very powerful line string editor. It's not designed for creating lines. If you want to do that, we typically would do that within the Smart Draw command to draw your line, and then once you've drawn your line, whether it be 2D or 3D, you then switch the command back to the editor and you can then use your editing function. Now the switch command here is doing the same thing as the switch commands up here. So if I'm in Smart Edit and I click this button here, it will toggle me to Smart Draw. If I click this function here and go to Smart Edit, it's doing the same thing as hitting the edit button in the header row. So you can toggle it, and it's no different to doing this pull down here and here. It just gives you a single click access to toggle between the commands. It means you can leave the commands running, which means there's no load time for any commands, and you can toggle very quickly between the different modes and do a lot of editing and jump between the different functions. And you can stack currently you can stack all of the big five, what we call our big five commands, which includes Smart Elevate. It also includes the crop crossing command. So if I went into data prep here and pick crop crossing, that also has that implementation, and our plan is to implement this across all the Rockpile commands, so that when you're in a command it will stack them and you can decide which one you want to switch to, and you can just, instead of closing, you're just switching between the commands, and that saves you closing commands and opening and closing and opening. And with this little pop-up menu that we have in things like Smart Edit, when you're in this editor and you're picking up the line here, you can always do that Shift M and get access to things like rock grips and the profile viewer. So if you want to edit the line you're working with, you can go directly to the profile viewer, or you can do Shift M and go straight to rock grips. And so instead of having to close the command, now I can grab the grips on here and edit that and straighten it out and do whatever I might need to do to this line. Take that node out from here, move this node up into this area, do this kind of thing, and as soon as I click back into here, now the grips will disappear and I'm back into being able to select the line and edit it using the elevation or the position editor down here. So this is kind of how we're trying to work into, while each command like Smart Edit, Smart Draw, Smart Elevate has a specific role, we're integrating those commands so you can move very quickly between them as well, not only within the command using hotkeys, but between the commands as well, to make that sort of editing, drawing, elevating experience a more homogeneous kind of set of tools. So hopefully you like that. The keys to success are remembering to use the escape key to toggle between the select and the edit function when you're in either the horizontal or the vertical editor. And in the add mode, you can press along the line if you're in a vertical VPI addition, and then type in the elevation. But if you don't want to type in an elevation and you want to pick another location, just hit the escape key and it will let you go back and pick a new location. So these tools, while they're integrated, they allow you to move very quickly between functions. Okay, thanks for your time.